Hello YouTube viewers. I've just watched MJ Lorton's review of the Unity model UT803 digital bench multimeter, and I thought I might do a quick video, maybe not so quick, to give a possibly reasonable alternative to it in the inexpensive bench multimeter market anyway. This is a Mastech model, I have to read it here, M9803R. That's what it was sold as through Amazon. You'll notice the box doesn't have a name on it. More about that later. It's a 4,000 count meter, whereas the Unity in question is a 6,000 count meter. But otherwise, I think that the feature set pretty much matches up. You saw that there was no brand name on the box, and I did buy this as a Mastech model M9803R, and on the instruction manual also there is no name, just bench multimeter. However, if we take a closer look at the meter itself, you'll notice the name brand Sinometer or Sinometer, or however you want to pronounce it. And looking at Amazon and eBay, this particular device is sold under several different brand names, among them being Mastech, Sinometer, Vichy, Protech, and there was a couple of others, but I forget what they are now. I didn't write them down. I paid $132 US dollars in August of 2012 for this meter, and a quick look at Amazon and eBay shows that on Amazon the low price is $119 US dollars, and eBay varies anywhere from that same $119 US dollars up to 300 plus. What comes in the box is a set of frankly cheap plastic leads that are unbranded, rated max 1000 volts, 10 amp, Cat 3, and they're kind of a cheap plasticky feel. A shoulder strap that connects here and there, and a driver disc. Well, it's labeled driver, however it's the software for the data logging. Yes, this does do data logging, and that is exactly why I bought it, because it's an inexpensive data logging, runs off the mains multimeter. And yes, the CD is just a CDR, and that's exactly the way it came. The rotary switch is not exactly smooth, but it is functional. And it does have nice detents so that you know when it goes into a mode. All the modes are the current measuring modes on this side, and volts, ohms, diode check, capacitor check on this side. Hertz right down here, and there is an off position at the center top and the center bottom. The buttons are the soft type, found on many instruments and remote controls and just things everywhere. The display could be a bit bigger, I think, but it's serviceable enough. It has just a little bit of a problem with viewing angle. More on that later. It doesn't have the big bail type handle, as you can see, but it does have a flip out foot that snaps down very nicely so it can sit flat on the bench. It has a carry handle on this side, and of course the shoulder strap connects to the straps on either side. On the back we have the RS-232 out, mains power switch, mains in. This is 110 only, I believe, for US use, and the battery compartment. On the top we have a little storage compartment that just opens with a nice little lever there. And also inside the storage compartment is the fuse compartment, which is rather difficult to open, and I think that's a good thing. I don't know if we can see the fuses in there. Probably not without extra light. Okay, I've got a bit of extra light since I don't have a really nice recording studio. But you can see there is a ceramic fuse and a glass fuse for the inputs. There's also a fuse on the AC input right behind this little cover. Just pops out. Now, one of the interesting features of this multimeter is that it can run on AC mains power or two different types of battery. We'll open the battery compartment here. And we can have either a standard 9-volt battery here, or we can have 6 AA's, which is also in a 9-volt style connector, so it's easier to load and unload the batteries. Now, for the test purposes, I'm just going to leave this out and run it on the mains, because the backlight does not stay lit if it's running on the battery. You press the button and it stays on for about 3 to 5 seconds and turns off, and there's not a way to make it stay on. If it's running on mains, you turn the backlight on and it stays on. I don't have a voltage reference source, so I'm going to do a comparison, which I know is pretty much meaningless, but I'm going to do it anyway. And for comparison, I'm going to use a Tech Power TP4000ZC and a Fluke Model 233. Now let's get this where it can be seen. That looks reasonable enough. And I'm going to start, and before I start, I'm going to say that only the Fluke will sit on DC volts stable with the leads floating. The Tech Power and the Mastech, actually I have them sitting with the leads shorted together so they'll sit stably. You can see the Tech Power wants to float just a little bit, and the Mastech wants to float a lot. But only when it's running on mains power. If it's running on the battery power, it doesn't do that, and I do have it on mains power right now. And in fact, I think if I put my hand, no, not so much. It was doing it a while ago, but I didn't have the leads connected. So we're going to start with a AA cell. And the Mastech shows the voltage to be 1.578. The Tech Power shows 1.570. And the Fluke shows 1.573. So they're all pretty close to agreement with that. Next, I'm going to have a mostly dead 9-volt. And on the Mastech we get 7.68. On the Tech Power we have 7.64, and on the Fluke we get 7.65. You'll have to pardon the traffic noise. I live right next to a very busy highway. This is the main reason that I bought the Mastech, to monitor and data log the charging and discharging of the battery in my hybrid car. See, I have my battery charger there. It's not connected at the moment. I just have it hooked up to the car battery just to give the high DC voltage. And you can see that there's a little bit of difference, not a whole lot. I would say not much for my purposes anyway. And you'll notice that on the 5 on the Mastech display, you can just barely see a faint part of that segment that should be clear. And if you get down at a lower angle, you get a lot of glare. But you can see that it kind of goes away. It depends on your viewing angle. Okay, we're back inside now and looking at AC mains power. The Fluke and the Tech power sort of agree, with the Mastech being just a little bit higher. As I mentioned earlier, I don't have the equipment to generate reference signals, so I'm going to use this application on a Mac to generate some audio tones. Not the best in the world, but I guess it's better than nothing, isn't it? Anyway, on my setup here, we're going to use an X-Tech 381295A to monitor the quality of the audio signal, and the Mastech is going to show its frequency display. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a spurious display occasionally, and I don't know if that's just from the setup or if something the Mastech is doing on its own. But anyway, we'll get the first tone. We're going to do 1 kilohertz sine wave. And the sine wave seems fairly stable. The X-Tech is showing it at 999.8 hertz. And now let's try a square wave at 1 kilohertz. Not a very clean square wave, because we are using audio amplifiers and the sound system in the Mac to generate the signals. Now triangle wave. And a sawtooth. Now the X-Tech is reading the sawtooth as 999.8 hertz, and you can see that the Mastech is reading it as something entirely different. Now we'll go back to a sine wave, and let's just jump to 10 kilohertz. Which it did not do. Why not? Let's try again. There we go. "10 kilohertz sine wave." But the square wave is going to be really nasty. How about a triangle wave? and the sawtooth. Yeah, we're just having all kinds of trouble, so that's a no-go. That test means nothing. So let's try 20 kilohertz sine wave. Decent. And if you can read the screen on the X-Tech, the voltage per division is 1 volt, so we're getting approximately 2 volts peak to peak, more or less. And no real point in trying the other waveforms because I'm sure that the audio system just really isn't up to it. Now let's take a look at the software. But before we get started with that, you may have noted that this is a rather old laptop, and it does have the RS-232 port on it, whereas most newer laptops or desktops as well do not have the RS-232 serial ports on them. They have USB. I use this pluggable USB serial connector from Amazon, about $15 US. Yes, there are cheaper ones, but I think that this one works really well. This laptop is running Windows 98 SE. It has no trouble at all connecting. Right now it is connected through the serial port, the RS-232 port, but I have had it with 2 meters connected. Since there's only one serial port, the other meter has to go through the USB, and it works just fine with this. I've also used it with Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Mac Snow Leopard. No problems at all with any of those. Upon review, I realized that I implied that the Mastech software was available for the Mac, and it isn't. What I use on the Mac is this open source program called QTDMM. It's for Linux, but there is a compiled binary for the Mac available. We'll just take a really quick peek at it right here. And at the moment it is connected to the TechPower TP4000ZC just because it's a lot easier to just set it down there and plug it in. And if you hit start, it will start its logging. Just like that. You can see the graph is starting right down here. So it's a fairly nice little program, and has quite a few different meters that you can put in, even manual settings, but then there's quite a long list of different meters. Anyway, just didn't want to have any confusion about what software would do. It's available for Windows only. But anyway, this is a Pentium 150 that I bought brand new in 1998. It's a compact Presario model 1610. And it gets the job done for what I want to do, which is to monitor the charge and discharge cycles on the hybrid battery in my car. Now the software that came with the Mastech is version 1.1. We'll take a really quick look at it right now. In fact, it's already connected. And it should be on COM1. Yes, it is. I have a little trouble seeing the pointer on this display. Oh, I lost it again. There it is. And the setup, let's zoom into the setup a little bit. Well, that was highly professional zooming. Now then, the thing that I didn't quite like about this version of the software is there's no interval, or no settable interval for the recording. It just goes, streams as quickly as it gets the information from the meter. Which, if you're running a charge cycle that takes roughly 20 hours, that's going to be a pretty big file. So to that end, I went looking for a different version and found one. Right here, version 2.0. Okay, and it should be set up. Let's see, yep, COM1. Let me look at the settings. I think that I had changed the settings. I usually set it for a 20-second interval, but I have it set now for a 5-second interval so that it's just not quite so dull. You can see something happening a little more quickly. Plus, I've set the range back to auto. I usually have the range set 150 to 185 because that's the battery voltage range, more or less, on the hybrid car. Okay, we're going to say that's okay. Go back up here and hit start. And we should get something within 5 seconds. And there we go. It does show a min-max right up here. So pretty much there it is. I'm not exactly sure what this part of the display is. I thought it was supposed to show the bar graph, but it almost always shows that, no matter what you're doing. So your guess is as good as mine. Anyhow, I find this part of it quite useful for what I'm doing to kind of see what the state of my hybrid battery is, which currently is rather poor. Now, I mentioned the min-max here. The min-max I have not used on the meter itself, and also the meter has a memory and a relative function, which I also don't use, so I can't really say much about. But anyhow, when you have got as much data as you need, or your event is over, whatever, you stop and you can save the data as either a CSV, well, it'll be CSV, but it'll have a different extension. I think it may have a .DMM extension or something like that on the DOS file. Or you can just save it as an Excel, and it will give it a .CSV extension. And notice that it doesn't prompt to save the file before it closes. It just closes. So you better be sure you want to close it. And there you have my off-the-cuff review of the Mastech model M9803R bench type digital multimeter. Not very technical, not very in-depth. I just did the best I could with what I had on hand. If you have any questions, comments, or you'd like to see something different, maybe something I didn't think of or didn't point out, please just leave a comment down below and I'll see what I can do to accommodate you. Thanks for watching.